Open this meeting. Good morning. You have arrived. If you are planning on being at the Community Development Committee of Cuyahoga County Council, it is Monday, April 3rd at approximately 10:05 a.m. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting. We have a variety of issues to see today, and we'll move rather quickly through those issues. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent. Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is absent. Mr. Kelly.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, there's no public comment.
We have minutes from the March 20 meeting. Gentlemen, have you had a chance to look at those minutes?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
If there are no other, I'm sorry? Are there no other comments? Is there, you second? And so now, all in favor of passage of these minutes?
Aye.
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 Thank you. The minutes are passed, and we can now move on to the committee meeting items of this agenda. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2023-0069, awarding a total sum not to exceed $38,700 to the Village of Bentleyville for the Riverview Park Improvements Project from the District 6 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
So as is standard, I'd like to have folks from the community being represented come forward, identify themselves with their name and their position, and then tell us briefly why this funding is important for their community. Gentlemen.
Members of Council, Leonard Spremuli, I'm the mayor of the Village of Bentleyville.
I'm Jeff Filarski, I'm the village engineer.
We're here for our application of approximately $38,000 for our village community park. Our community park presently has a pavilion, and we're asking for funds for some additional paving, for some drainage issues, and for the new restrooms that we intend to construct based on a grant we received from the county. Our village park straddles the Chagrin River. It's used for family gatherings, graduations, family reunions. We have a bocce ball court. We have a league. We have a birding area. It's a quite beautiful and very peaceful park within a very peaceful community.
Mr. Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. So right now, the park consists of about 8 acres, and the parking lot is just gravel paved, and we're going to pave it as part of this project. And in the as far as the restroom goes, the village currently just rents a portalet during the summer and fall season, so we want to upgrade that to more of a nice permanent structure. And we're going to be putting in some bioretention also to deal with the runoff from the parking lot before the discharge flow goes to the Chagrin River, which is wraps around the park.
Do my colleagues have any questions for these gentlemen? Mr. Kelly?
The restroom, is that a modular unit that's just going to get dropped in place where they come clean it out, or is this something that'll go down into the ground?
Yes, this is a vault type unit that comes pre-made and gets set into an excavation and then gets pumped out approximately every 6 months, 12 months.
All right, thanks.
Mr. President?
Do you have a timeline for completion?
We would like to complete this by the end of this year.
Oh, moving quickly, that's a great idea. So that there'd be some use of it late summer, early fall.
Yeah, I would think we'd get some fall usage out of it.
Excellent. If there are no further questions, gentlemen, I would accept a motion to move this back to council.
I make a motion that we move this to full council under 3 readings.
Second?
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With no,
My name as well.
you'd like to add your name to this? Certainly. Gentlemen, It has been moved back to council. It will have 3 full readings because of its importance. But with the support of this community, I believe that you will be seeing funding in your future. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Resolution 2023-0070, awarding a total sum not to exceed $250,000 to the Village of Mayfield for permanent restrooms at the Grove Amphitheater from the District 6 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Good morning.
I am Diane Walgamuth. I'm the Director of Administration with Mayfield Village.
Good morning. I'm Shane McGavin. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for Mayfield Village. I'd like to thank you for having us here today. What we have on the agenda is restrooms for the Grove Amphitheater. The Grove Amphitheater was built a few years ago with assistant funding from the county, was part of this project from the beginning. Since then, the Grove Amphitheater has grown in proportion of its reach to the community of Cuyahoga County. Originally, back when I came on board in 2017, we were getting 100, 200 people throughout the county. Now we're getting to 3,000, 4,000 people who's coming to our facility. We provide free entertainment for the county and for farther than that. And I always like to tell this story was the impact of how this has grown. Last summer, I was at the airport around the corner here, and the TSA officer said, "I like your shirt." It was a Grove. And he's like, me and my family like to go to the concerts. So though we're on the west side, we have people coming from the west side. We're on the east side, so we have people coming from the west side, from the south, and everywhere else. What this will allow is currently the Grove has trailer restrooms and portable restrooms that we use on a seasonal basis. This will allow us to have full service restrooms and to serve the larger population that is now coming to the Grove.
What is the total project cost?
The project cost, we're going to estimate to be around $450,000, but with ever-changing costs, it could be it could be over 500, but the village is committed to this project, wherever that number lies.
Do you have a contingency built into your current estimate?
No, at this point, we don't have a contingency, but as I said, I overestimated the project when I was getting quotes. So when we go after that, we're going to make sure we have plans to have a large enough restroom, which I believe the one that we've been talking is about 16 units, 8 women's, 8 men's, is the plan.
Do either of my colleagues have questions? Things are good for you.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we move this to the full council under 3 readings.
Second?
I have a motion, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There's no opposition. This will move forward to the full council for 3 full readings because of its importance to your community and to Cuyahoga County. Thank you for coming in this morning and good luck.
Thank you for your time.
Resolution 2023-0071, awarding a total sum not to exceed $250,000 to the Village of Walton Hills for the Village Hall Community Room Roofing Project from the District 6 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm a street commissioner for the Village of Walton Hills. Our application is for...
Sir, your first and last name, please.
Oh, I apologize. My name is Rob Kalman, street commissioner for the
You
Village
just
of
think
Walton
street
Hills.
commissioner is your name now?
I apologize.
Your mother liked you enough to give you a name?
I don't usually speak in public. I
It's okay.
apologize.
Thank you.
So our application, as stated, is for our roof on our Village Hall. The pictures of the roof were included in our application, as well as I sent a couple interior pictures last week. The Village Hall and the community room, it's home to the mayor's office, village council, all the municipal administrative services, police department, and we hold court there as well. On average, there are approximately 20 various meetings per month at the Village Hall, including the council meetings and various committee meetings, court, and social clubs. And we're in need of a roof. So, any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
What is the total project cost?
$400,000.
And so the city has committed the 150, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Any contingency built into that?
No, but we're moving forward.
Okay. Have you received bids for this?
Last year I presented to council, yes, budgetary numbers.
So
from-
you know given the
Very close.
inflationary factors
Even
and the
taking into factor.
materials?
Yes.
Okay. Colleagues, questions? Since neither of my colleagues have questions, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we move this to the full council.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
With no opposition, this moves forward to full council. Good luck, sir. I believe full council will be supportive of this.
Thank you very much.
Resolution 2023-0072, awarding a total sum not to exceed $250,000 to the City of Solon for the Solon Community Park Improvements Project from the District 6 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Rich Parker. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Solon, here to represent Solon's request for county ARPA funding.
Go ahead, please.
Our particular project is for our community park. Solon Community Park is centrally located with the community center and the senior center. It's an area that serves as the main hub for recreational and community activity. The city has embarked on a multi-phase project to improve and expand Solon Community Park using the results from a 2022 Park Master Plan completed by Branstetter Carroll. The city's approved funds within the 2023 budget to begin the comprehensive design work of Community Park, and this includes survey work, wetland delineation, and geotech surveys. Phase 1, which we hope to begin in 2024, will include things like updating our playground, our parking lot, trails, and things like that.
Questions? So, my memory is that there is approximately $3.5 million in phase 1.
Well, that's
of the
phase 1.
activity.
That's to begin in 2024.
So,
So 2023, we at the completion of the park master plan, we have some park concepts. This doesn't get us to where we're going to begin building and things like that. So we're in the process of completing a contract with a design builder. This design builder will develop comprehensive designs, and that's what these funds will be used towards. And then the completion of the comprehensive designs, the architectural designs, the geotech surveys and things like that. 2024 will begin phase 1 of probably a couple-year project where we'll phase in improvements to really the entire park.
you'll be issuing bonds for those?
Funding is still being discussed, but the city has fully committed to the park master plan. In fact, they adopted it into the city's master plan, and the plan itself outlined over 20 million in park improvements.
All right. So we're paying for design work?
That's correct.
And that's why I asked the follow-up question, because,
Sure.
of course, council wants to know that the wonderful plans that we help pay for, actually, there's a sequencing that looks like it's almost immediately afterwards. So that you would begin work, if design work is to take place the balance of this year, you would begin construction first quarter, second quarter of next year?
Yes, that's the plan. In fact, the city, again, the council approved the design build process, which isn't typical for Solon. But in order to expedite these improvements, they approved that process. And again, we're finalizing our agreement with a design builder and hope to have these designs completed really in the first half of 2023.
Who did you choose as your design builder?
Although the plan isn't finalized, we're very close to a plan with Mammoth Construction.
Okay. They done park work like this before?
They've done very large projects for, universities, big sporting complexes.
That
But they've
included
also done.
significant landscaping in park?
That's correct.
Okay.
But they've also done smaller projects, as small as just updating field turf.
Okay. Questions by my colleagues? A motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we move this to the full council under, for 3 readings.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? With no oppositions, this will move to the full council for 3 readings. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Resolution 2023-0073, awarding a total sum not to exceed $250,000 to the City of Broadview Heights for the purpose of constructing a new headquarters fire station from the District 6 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Good morning.
Chief Hayek, Broadview Heights, Jeffrey Hayek. Our goal is to ask for assistance in building of the new fire station, which our fire stations are 60 and 50 years old at this time. So we are looking to build a new station in the center of town that will obviously affect everybody in the community. Our stations were built, like I said, 60 years ago, which are outdated for today's standards. They weren't designed for ambulances, hazardous materials, equipment that we have now. During COVID-19 outbreak, we did not have the areas for our staff to separate, so we had to build areas that they could. So this will assess in that. Our goal is to start construction in the second quarter of 2024. And have any questions?
What is your total project cost?
$13 million.
And our funds will be used, will they be similar to the your predecessor for planning or?
Planning is already done. We have a full set of plans. We're looking on moving forward at this point in time.
Okay, it's just to get you over that last little
Yes.
bit of total project cost. Questions from my colleagues?
Are all the dollars in place, the full 13, is this the last?
There now, we have approximately $4 million in place at this time, and they're looking at bond issues for next year.
For the balance.
Yes.
If you said it and I missed it, when do you plan to, you've already started?
We have the plans are completely finished. We have them done. We have our plans all set and ready to go, and the goal is to start, depending on with everything in construction right now and pricing and stuff, that we're looking at starting second quarter of 2024.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, if there are no further questions? A motion from you, Mr. Kelly?
Sure. I make a motion to put this to full council for 3 readings.
Second.
I've heard, this motion has been placed on the floor. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. With no opposition, Chief, you're going home with a recommendation to full council. After 3 readings, the community should have its funding.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Have a wonderful day.
Resolution 2023-0074, awarding a total sum not to exceed $250,000 to the City of Mayfield Heights for a new pool at the Aquatic and Community Center from the District 6 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Good morning.
Morning. My name is Sean Ward. I'm the Recreation Director for the City of Mayfield Heights. And we are requesting $250,000 to offset the cost of our pool at our Aquatic and Community Center. The aquatics portion will cost $7.6 million.
And the use of the county's 250, will it be toward plans? Will it be toward construction?
Towards construction.
Questions by my colleagues?
The total amount of the project?
The aquatics portion will be $7.6 million.
Are all of the funding dollars in
The
place?
total cost of the whole project will be $34 million. For that was the community center, all portions of that.
And you're issuing bonds for the balance, or
Correct.
any other questions, gentlemen? I'd accept a motion at this point.
Go right.
All right, I make a motion to move this to full council for 3 readings.
Second.
This motion is on the floor. If I hear no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposition? Congratulations, this moves forward to the full council. There will be 3 readings, and at that time, unless there are problems, which is unusual, council will grant your community the money. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Resolution 2023-0075, awarding a total sum not to exceed $250,000 to the City of Brecksville for ADA improvements at the Brecksville Community Center from the District 6 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Good morning again.
Morning. Thank you, Council Vice President and members of council. My name is Monica Barkowitz, and I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the City of Brecksville. And our request before you today is for ADA improvements to kids' quarters. These improvements include the reconstruction of a quarter-mile loop trail and the construction of an ADA entrance ramp at kids' quarters. Kids Quarters is home to not only amenities for children, but also to amenities that can be used by the community as a whole. This park gets a lot of intergenerational use due to its pavilion, bocce ball courts, pickleball courts, etc. Our current loop trail has exceeded its useful life. There's much heaving and cracking throughout the trail, and it is not currently ADA compliant in respect to width and cross grade. So we are requesting $250,000 and proposing a local match of $54,170 for a total project cost of $304,671. That includes a 10% contingency, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Gentlemen?
Trying to picture where this is. In my mind, I'm picturing that McDonald's right there.
Yeah, so it's directly east of that, directly south of Brecksville City Hall, right next
Okay.
to our community center.
Okay. Did I hear, is there a question?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this a asphalt paved path or what?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
No question.
If there are no further questions, could I have a motion?
I make a motion to move this to the full council under 3 readings.
A second?
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 There's no opposition. Congratulations. This will be moving forward to council. It will have 3 readings, and at that time, we believe the community will receive access to these funds.
Thank you so
very
much.
much.
Thank you for your time.
Madam Clerk?
The next item will be a presentation from the Community Reinvestment Advisory Subcommittee members, and it will be a report on home mortgage lending in Cuyahoga County.
Thank you. Over a year ago, this committee and Cuyahoga County Council authorized a subcommittee to look at investment in Cuyahoga County by lenders in general, but specifically, we looked at a relationship that was created because of the investment of the real estate tax dollars that Cuyahoga County collects from its residents and property owners for the properties located in this county. At that time, council felt that it was important for us to take a look at the benefits that could be received both from our residents and by the lender itself, because it was a relationship created because there would be a payment for the services they provided. At this time, there were approximately 14 people that were asked to join the committee. They worked for over a year and a half to come up with ideas about how a lender could work with Cuyahoga County. It is not the standard methodology of operation to look at lenders and how they work with the community. That's typically done by municipalities. But in this case, because of the substance of our real estate tax dollars, I asked my colleagues on council to let us have a dialogue on an ongoing basis with not just this lender, but other lenders as well. At this time, I'd like to ask members of this committee one at a time to approach the microphone, identify themselves, and speak about their perspectives. This morning, I know that we have at least 4, maybe 5, who'd like to come before us, and then have a presentation by Frank Ford, who acted as additional staff support with our staff. Who's speaking first? Ms. Anderson, since alphabetically, you would be the first person. Yeah, that's a great reason. We all love the alphabet.
Well, first of all, I want to extend a great morning to each and every one of you that are here.
Ms. Anderson, can you lower your microphone a little bit? Thank you.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
And
Okay.
identify yourself
I
and the
certainly
agency
am.
you represent.
I sure am. My name is Barbara Anderson, and I am the chairperson for Greater Cleveland Reinvestment Coalition. Again, I wish each and every one of you a great morning. And a special thank you to our Vice President, the chair of the committee, Cheryl Stevens, for the honor of presenting the findings of the subcommittee. Working group, I thank you, Madam Stevens, for the support that you have provided in ensuring that the report would be completed and presented this morning by Mr. Frank Ford, along with comments from me and my fellow co-presenters. Again, my name is Barbara Anderson, and I come to speak by putting the eyes, ears, hands, and feet and hearts of the community first. I came to speak on behalf of the community to represent the voice of the community. Each of you have been provided with the report from the subcommittee. Mr. Ford has meticulously outlined data, stats, numbers, including rankings for various financial institutions. He has included graphs with ascending and descending colorful lines highlighting the progress or the lack thereof of many of those same institutions. Important, relevant information has been included. I am respectfully asking that you focus your attention on the faces behind some of those numbers. Those numbers and lines are people. They are women, men, girls, and boys. Those numbers represent our young, our middle-aged, our seniors, and everything in between that is in the community. It represents our housing conditions. In many of our neighborhoods, those numbers are a representation of the results of what happens when a neighborhood is unserved or underserved by a financial institution. What happens to a community when a bank does not live up to its agreement? When there's no real community engagement, when a promise is broken? I want us to clearly see the pain on those faces in those numbers. I want us to taste the bitterness of neglect in those stats. I want us to smell the stench of rejection in those graphs. I want us to feel the touch of hopelessness in those rankings. And I want us to hear the groans and the moans of helplessness in the report. Why? Because it's not just a house that no longer is a home that suffers. When there's a lack of community engagement, everyone must play their part. Every single person must keep their commitment. Everyone must keep their promise, because when we don't, this is when our neighborhood resources are in danger. Quality education is endangered. Public transportation is endangered. Small businesses are endangered. Medical services are endangered. Food deserts develop and access to healthy food is endangered. Generational wealth is endangered. And yes, even banking is endangered. This is why this report is so important. This is why we need the data. This is why we need the stats. This is why we need the graphs, because it clearly identifies that first, we must do better, and secondly, where we must focus our attention. We must be vital partners in a sustainable community. Financial health affects the quality of life in a community. We must work in partnership and not in opposition. Banking is a necessity. It's necessary building block of a community. We cannot afford to neglect not one of our zip codes while promoting another. Our neighborhoods were not designed to just survive. They were designed to thrive. Thank you for looking behind the curtain of numbers with me. Let's keep looking, and let's hold each other accountable. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I think you can alpha sort Mayor Blackwell. That would be, I think that becomes you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Council President Purnell Jones, for your vision for this subcommittee, and thank you for leading it. I'm going to speak as an elected...
Excuse me, Mayor Blackwell, can you just state your name for the record, please?
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Mayor Annette Blackwell, the City of Maple Heights.
Thank you.
My apologies. I'm just going to speak here as an elected official. The work that you're doing in this committee, the work that we're doing as a committee, saves cities. It gives us the ability to compete. For elected officials, it gives us another tool to move our cities forward, to take care of our people, to impact the quality of life, to address poverty in a measurable way, to reinvest in cities that have traditionally been disinvested in, and that starts with the local bank. It is a place I had my first job as a safe deposit clerk, here in this building, when it was Ameritrust, and now I sit as mayors. The financial partnership that elected officials and leaders need to move their cities forward is significant. It helps loan startup capital for small businesses, the subway, the car wash, the salon, the daycare. This is the beginning of moving us past poverty. Many have said that cities like Maple Heights are cities where people live that receive a lot of handouts. We can change that by giving them the tools to lift themselves up out of poverty. That they understand their first checking account, how to manage money. Financial literacy is administered in those banks. A relationship that may serve as a checking account, but then maybe I inherited money and I can now invest in a certificate of deposit. It helps the buildup of those individual citizens. For the city of Maple Heights is where we put our money that we get from the sources of revenue that we receive money from. Income tax, of course, being the most significant, property tax, and then, of course, that elevates our schools. Zip codes indeed are infected by the money invested in those schools, what they can expend per pupil. That raises the report card. And then those commissions that they're labeled with and we're challenged with, Maple Heights being one, first being a city declared in fiscal emergency. Perhaps if the banking industry was stronger, there were more people paying into the system in terms of helping us manage our revenue, increase our revenue while decreasing expenditures, we could have avoided fiscal emergency. When I became the mayor almost 8 years ago, I took a look at it. We lost almost 30% in property tax valuation. That means a decrease in revenue. And then we've had COVID. And then during that 2008, people lost their jobs. Well, that's the income tax revenue. We are up against so many challenges, the reduction in the local government fund. And so what the things that we can control, or some might say the low-hanging fruit, is what we can do here on the ground, in the community. Strengthen our community banks, making sure that those banks that we have our direct deposit, all of my city employees have direct deposit. Other jobs I've had as direct deposit, it's encouraged. One of the things I did as a young banker was the fast cashier card. That was the first ATM card. And then I was a new accounts representative clerk downstairs in the tower across from the rotunda where banking used to be, which now has a Heinen's. But I encouraged our senior citizens back then to not wait for the mailman on the 3rd, but I encouraged many of them for direct deposit. So now they can just go to the bank and pull the money and not wait for the post office. And we all know what's happening with the post office. It's safe and secure. And so we've got our most vulnerable with their monies in these banks. My first job was a drive-through person at Burger King in East Cleveland. I opened a bank account at what is now Key Bank, but it was Cleveland Trust, Star Bank, First Star. I have the same checking account number that I had at 18 years old, or 14 years old when I got my first check with a work permit. I have invested in this bank, the bank that has the largest amount of deposits in this county. There's a return on investment that business persons look for, an ROI. There's a return on investment my residents look for when they choose Maple Heights to do business or live. They want their trash picked up. They want the police to call if there's danger. They want the fire department, EMS squad, if they're falling and can't get up. That's the return on investment that I must ensure them, any elected official, as you guys do here, as I've seen you approve some pretty amazing projects. Well, I'm asking for the banks to do their return on investment. For that new employee depositing their first check, opening up their first checking account, the senior who has their Social Security check and their pension, their mortgage is there, to give some of it back, to reinvest in our neighborhoods so that we can raise the standard of our general funds, so we can stay out of fiscal emergency, so schools can stay out of academic distress commission. I know what you do, Council President, with Students of Promise. We're trying to raise our standards. We're trying to compete. We're trying to lift those in our communities out of poverty. It starts with banking. It starts with investment. It starts with a return on those investments. It is my goal and my hope that as I continue to participate on this committee, that we will do just that. We will help elected officials who have raised their hands and taken the oath of office, that they will serve their communities impartially, faithfully, and honestly, that you'll give us the tools to do that as the best we can. For those people who constantly are making their investment in banks, whether it's mortgage, where their business account is, cities where our huge amount of dollars are invested in these banks, so much so that some of us are able to get returns on that interest. Not much, but we trust them to help us make payroll for our bond ratings, to give small grants for businesses. We need a little bit back. And I think that's what you'll hear from the rest of those that will come after me. But as an elected official standing here, I'm telling you, if we want cities to continue to be safe, and we don't want to put them in any kind of distress, whether it's an academic distress or fiscal distress, it starts with a banking relationship and a bigger return on our investment, which we have determined, and all of the work that you'll see in the presentation has not happened. Thank you so much for this time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Who's coming to talk to us next? Is that you, Sally?
Good morning. My name is Sally Martin O'Toole. I am the Director of Building and Housing for the City of Cleveland, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, especially for the leadership that this committee is showing, and specifically Councilwoman Stevens for convening a subcommittee around this topic, which I have been part of the Greater Cleveland Reinvestment Coalition since its inception under the chairmanship of Barbara Anderson, who spoke earlier. And we are so grateful that you're lending your political clout and your voice to this issue of lack of lending in the most challenged parts of our community. So when I came into this role with the City of Cleveland, my biggest personal goal is to try to affect some positive change, especially on the east side, where we've seen so much disinvestment. And the fact that we are no better off, and in fact worse off than we were since the early 60s in the black-white homeownership gap, I think is appalling. And I think the role of lenders in that is great. And I think we owe it to our constituents to hold them to a higher standard than they've been held. When we look at redlining maps from the 30s, and we look at maps from where children are being lead poisoned today, where we've seen erosion in home ownership, where we see the most vacancy and abandonment, the maps are the same. We can do better. We have to do better. Mayor Bibb is putting tens of millions of dollars into an effort to improve the city's east side. As a code enforcement person, traditional tools of code enforcement don't work where people don't have money to repair their houses. They have to have the capital. So my goal, my hope, is that we can all speak with one voice on this topic. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight, but I think our local lenders have a role to play here that's critical in putting investment on the east side of Cleveland, the east entering suburbs where investment has not been occurring. We've lost almost 20% home ownership in parts of the east side of Cleveland, where investors are buying up properties, they're renting them out, creating a permanent category of renters, people who have no hope of home ownership. That has to change in order to restore vibrancy. We know that tax base, the shifting of tax burden to other areas from areas that are disinvested is a real thing. So this affects the pocketbook of everybody throughout the county. It isn't just people in those areas and then, we can turn a blind eye. We really can't. We're all in this together. So we do appreciate greatly your advocacy on this. And I hope to see all the suburbs as well engaging with the banks in this way and holding them to a higher standard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nowak, are you the cleanup batter? Spring training has begun. And I'm a big baseball fan.
That's right. That's right. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. My name is Kevin Nowak, Executive Director of CHN Housing Partners and the President and CEO of our nonprofit mortgage company, CHN Housing Capital. Our other speakers today have spoken quite a bit about kind of the value of home ownership and the reinvestment, by banks in our community to help ensure that. And the first thing I just want to reinforce is that importance that banks are held accountable to investment in our community. This could be done in a number of different ways, and when there's an intentionality about it, you can see success in the work. CHN created CHN Housing Capital, as I mentioned, our nonprofit mortgage company back in 2019. We began deploying something that we call the Believe Mortgage, which is a more flexible mortgage product that really we designed in order to address some of the issues with credit in our community. We began by looking at barriers like credit scores. We began looking at down payment. We began looking at an intentional approach to working with realtors, such as those Realtist Association realtors who work, in our communities, as well as we took a real focus on the appraisal issues that we see and appraisal bias issues that we see within our communities. What we have done to date is we've been able to originate 64 of those mortgages. We have said 97% of our borrowers have been African American and almost 50% have been female-headed households. Our average loan amount is $89,000, which shows that we're addressing the low-dollar mortgage issues that we see within our communities. 100% of our appraisals have been at or above the purchase price. So with an intentionality and approach, we can see that lending within all of our communities is possible. Each bank has a different perspective and capacity in how they make reinvestments. Some are better at some reinvestment opportunities than others. Sometimes that depends upon their business approach, their personnel strategy. But the broader Community Reinvestment Act really asks for banks to take a holistic approach to investment in the community. Like any organization, Cuyahoga County has an opportunity when it enters into business relationships to set the terms of those relationships. It can, in setting those terms, it can expect its contractual partners to operate in a certain way, right? And when we create those contractual obligations, I think they should be fair, they should be binding, and I think they should include affirmative reinvestment requirements. But like any contractual requirement, we should ensure that they're specific, well-defined, and measurable. We talked a lot about home ownership in our community, investment in our community. I would advocate that as we prioritize these contractual requirements, we look to capital support for new and existing homeowners as a central piece to the negotiation. This could be deployed directly by banks or through partner organizations. And we've seen across the country, oftentimes partner organizations can be as, if not more effective than banks to be able to create that capital availability in the community. And in either case, the bank would be ultimately responsible for those contractual obligations. So thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate being able to contribute what I was able to the subcommittee, and wish you the best in these further efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nowak. One of the things I want to point out to the community is that the 4 individuals who just spoke come to us from very different perspectives. Ms. Anderson has been an activist, I won't name the number of years now, on behalf of home ownership, about how markets can be wrecked with poor lending. Not that we're implying that any of the conventional larger banks in this community have done what some of the second-rate market folks have done that Ms. Anderson fought against for years. Ms. Martin has stood firm on the quality of our housing stock across this county and the ways that we can invest to make our communities stronger. The mayor is often the face of who a community is, and Ms. Blackwell has represented her community incredibly well. She doesn't miss a beat in things that are stronger and better for her community. She takes that vote that her community has invested in her individually and collectively seriously, and she will sometimes turn a private conversation into community conversation because there's nothing she won't do to serve her community. And Mr. Nowak leads one of the region's largest housing-focused nonprofits. They've been able to do what a lot of us have dreamed should be done in our communities, and now they're working in 4 states to find better housing and economic opportunities for the residents that they serve in a variety of communities. We couldn't have been prouder to have folks like these on this investment community sharing with us their time, their staff, information they received from colleagues, or research they've done themselves. But all of this was brought together by the staff at Cuyahoga County, several of whom are in the room today, specifically Mr. King in the back and the Chief of Staff, Joe Nani. But they also worked with Frank Ford, who helped us do details from the very beginning. Frank, would you come forward now and give us an overview of what we've worked on for this year? Oh, in addition, I want to recognize Mr. Benjamin, who represents one of our larger committed religious-based affiliates, the Greater Cleveland congregations, and the commitment to always be willing to listen and look at how we serve others better is incredibly important. Frank, please identify yourself.
Yes, Frank Ford, Senior Policy Advisor at the Fair Housing Center, although I'm here today specifically as a private consultant retained by County Council to do 2 things: to provide research on mortgage lending, and I produced a report, which I believe you have, and also to provide consulting and technical assistance to the Reinvestment Advisory Subcommittee. The report that you have, it was really looks at several different levels. It looks at general findings about mortgage lending in Cuyahoga County. Then it also looks at very specific performance of specific lenders. And then it has recommendations for going forward. I don't really have time to go through the entire report, although I will take questions on it. What I am going to do is show you a brief PowerPoint that in some ways is a mini version of the report. It's going to start with some general overview, some key things that I want to bring to your attention. It will talk about some specific lenders, and then it will end with some recommendations. And hopefully I do this right. Okay, so you know who I am. First thing, and I think this is really important, homeownership in Cuyahoga County has been declining for over 10 years based on U.S. Census. And I've got 5 regions here: the outer suburbs, west inner suburbs, west side of Cleveland, east side of Cleveland, and the east inner suburbs. The outer suburbs is the only region in Cuyahoga County that's had a slight increase in home ownership in this period. All the others have had a decline. The 2 on the right with the greatest decrease are the majority African American communities in the county. Second thing, investors, their acquisitions of homes has been increasing since 2004, and it's a pretty dramatic increase. The highest increase is in the blue line, east side of Cleveland. And in 2020, nearly 45%, or about 45% of all homes in the east side of Cleveland were purchased by investors. The next greatest increase was the east inner suburbs. 28% of all homes in the east inner suburbs were purchased by investors. The west side of Cleveland, also pretty significant, about 1 out of 4. And then Cuyahoga County generally, if you follow the graph, it's really it's a tripling of investor acquisitions in the period 2004 through 2020. The 2 areas that didn't have that much increase were the west inner suburbs and the outer suburbs. So if you take these 2 things together and think about loss of home ownership and yet acquisition, increased control and acquisition by investors, as home ownership declines, investors from around the world and the United States are increasing their activity. And what that really comes down to is that real estate in the county is increasingly coming under the control of people who don't live here. Another major thing I wanted to bring to your attention is, while we know that there's been a very healthy real estate market recovery in most of the county, there actually are areas of the county that are still struggling to recover. And the median sale price of homes in much of the county is actually still at $100,000 or below. And I just provide some examples. And keep in mind, when you see median, that actually means that half the sales are below that. So it's a pretty significant number. Maple Heights, 98,000, Warrensville, 80, East Cleveland, 30,000. The entire east side of Cleveland, the median is 51,000. It used to be 80,000 right before the foreclosure crisis. So it's dropped significantly. That's a tremendous loss of wealth for homeowners on the east side of Cleveland. Other communities, you'll see West Boulevard, Cadell, Bel Air Puritas, Brooklyn Center, Clark Fulton, and Stockyards are all below 100,000. So if you think about it, what that means is these homes could and should be opportunities for affordable home ownership. But, and I put this in here purposefully, this statement, we don't make loans under 100,000. City Councilman at Cleveland, Mike Polensek, I spoke to him just, this is new. So it's in the report, but it surfaced only about within the last 2 weeks. And I should preface this by saying that housing advocates have suspected this for at least 5 years, that banks are either intentionally or, well, nobody could ever pinpoint it to a statement made by any lender or any staff at a lender. This is a very important finding, that Councilman Polensek went to his neighborhood bank to get a loan to purchase the house next door to his. It became available, and he wanted to make sure that, it was preserved. And the loan officer said, we don't make loans under $100,000. It was KeyBank, by the way. So I want to talk a little bit about what's the dilemma here. There are a number of factors involved here. One is these low prices, low relatively, below 100, represent lost equity and wealth for many owners who bought before the foreclosure crisis. So as I mentioned, the east side of Cleveland, the median price is about $50,000. It used to be $80,000. That's collectively a $30,000 per house loss of wealth and equity. But then the second thing is when these homes are on the market for less than $100,000, they're affordable opportunities for home buyers, but not if people can't get loans, home purchase loans below $100,000. Meanwhile, as I showed earlier, investors are ramping up their activity and they're not using loans. They're paying cash. In some cases, they may be using a private hard money lender, not a bank or mortgage company, but in most cases, they're paying cash for properties. So here's some of the broad findings from the study. First of all, denial rates for blacks are still higher than for whites. I've been doing this research for about 6 years. That is still a significant finding. New that I've not discovered before, and this year I did do more detailed research than I've ever done before. Black borrowers who do get loans are 4 times more likely to be given higher priced, higher interest mortgage loans than whites. The third finding is, of course, already mentioned, cash paying investors. They're grabbing up the affordable home opportunities and converting them to rental. And finally, access to home repair loans is lowest in the areas where home repairs are most needed. I just want to make a quick note about the fiscal impact on counties and cities. So over decades now, there has been bank disinvestment. Used to refer to it as redlining. It's still happening to some extent. That has caused a dramatic loss of value in Cuyahoga communities. Lack of fair access to home purchase and home repair loans undermines housing market recovery in those communities. Loss of housing value in communities directly impacts property tax revenue that supports schools, safety services, social services provided by counties and municipalities. A study by my former employer, I used to work at the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, a study done by them found that this loss of this disinvestment in the distressed neighborhoods of Cleveland and entering suburbs has actually caused a shift of burden in property taxes to the outer suburbs. I've got a link here for this in case you had not seen this. It came out, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago. It's a very significant study. Moving on to, sorry, I meant to go to this. So what I did a little differently this year in doing the research is there are actually 7 lenders, 7 banks operating in Cuyahoga County who have multi-state commitments and agreements to improve their lending. Now, we know that KeyBank has an agreement with Cuyahoga County specifically, in which they made a commitment over 4 years, started 2 years ago, pretty much this month. But there actually are seven lenders who have commitments, and it's worth keeping that in mind. KeyBank is one of them. And I've listed here the dollar amounts that they've pledged, the years that they started their agreements. Notice that the first 3 go back about 6 years. The bottom 4 are very new. Their commitments only started in 2021 or later. But also, I should point out that here we're talking about banks that have an agreement or made a commitment. Now we have KeyBank has made 2 commitments. One was through this national commitment, and they made the one to the county. But we should keep in mind that every bank, forget these standalone commitments, they all have a commitment to begin with under the Community Reinvestment Act to meet the credit needs of their community. So you could say that some of these lenders are lenders who actually already have 2 commitments. KeyBank has 3. The national commitment they made for $16.5 billion, the commitment they made to you, and the commitment they already have under the federal Community Reinvestment Act. Looking specifically now at 6-year history of these 7 lenders, I think the thing that stands out, and keep in mind, there are 3 of these. The green line is Huntington, the blue line right below it is Fifth Third, the red line down at the bottom is KeyBank. Those 3 said back in 2016, we are going to improve our lending. In home purchase loans countywide, Huntington dramatically improved its lending since they made that commitment. Fifth Third actually declined which is, I'm not sure what the word that I can use for that. It's just as dramatic a decline as Huntington's is a dramatic increase. Disappointing, given that they made such a bold commitment 6 years ago. KeyBank has improved. Their lending, though, is significantly below Huntington's, but they have improved. The other banks are pretty flat, and I don't know, it's hard to say whether will they increase since they made their recent commitments. But as I pointed out, you know, they all have an agreement, they all have a commitment under the federal law to be doing better. I'm going to go to home repair loans as the next category. Now, KeyBank used to be the #1 home repair lender in Cuyahoga County, by far. That was one of their strengths. In 2016, they made 556 loans. You can see the trend. This is another disappointment for KeyBank. Made a commitment 6 years ago, we're going to improve our lending to underserved communities. Home repair should have been part of that. Now, there is an increase. You'll notice an increase in the last year. I think we have to keep an eye on that, see what happens. Huntington is, again, similar to their home purchase lending. It's a dramatic increase since they made their commitment back in 2016. Some of the others, well, notice Fifth Third, which is the darker blue line, they did increase from 54 to over 200 up to 2019, and then they declined again. The other lenders, some of them are doing virtually nothing. That was the one, Bank of America has that sort of gold line. They only made, looks like 10 home repair loans. PNC only made, excuse me, that's Fifth Third, only made 3. I'm going to move on. So with regard to low dollar loans, I analyzed loans made $50,000 or less. Amongst housing advocates and community development advocates over the last 5 years, that is the number that everybody has looked at. However, given the recent statement and report from Councilman Polensek, I'm thinking that going forward, I'm going to start changing that to 100,000 or less. But since the research right now is based on 50,000 or less, and the east side of Cleveland is the most representative region for that, I'm showing this graph, where the median home sale price in the east side of Cleveland is about 50,000. First of all, let me point out that no one is doing a great job here. There were 4,000 homes transacted in the east side of Cleveland in 2021. There were only 900 mortgages. That's in the main report. It's not here, but we can go to that slide or that graph after this if you want to. But so I would say generally, I'm not sure any lender is doing a great job at meeting this need. Although Huntington, of course, with at least 24 loans on the east side, the others pale by comparison. I'm going to wrap this up with top 5 recommendations for the next banking services contract. I think that I might have maybe 10 recommendations in there. Those recommendations have been developed in conversation over the last year, as Chair Stevens says, with the Reinvestment Advisory Subcommittee. Number 1, and Kevin Nowak referenced this as well, greater specificity in the next contract. And I want to stop for a minute. I don't have it on. This is not something in the presentation, but I want to say the county really should be commended for entering into the agreement 2 years ago. Even though I'm now saying, and many of us are saying, we wish it was more specific, but it was a major step forward for a county government, perhaps the first county government in the United States, to have an agreement like this with a bank to, if they're going to hold deposits and hold money from the county, they should make pledges to give something back. That has been done in municipalities since, in fact, Mike White was the first mayor to do it around 1991. So Cleveland has the distinction of being the first city to do it, and Cuyahoga County has the distinction perhaps of being the first county. So it was a remarkable achievement. At the same time, it needs to be improved. And the first way is that the specific commitments that KeyBank made were actually very general. There's almost no way to look at those commitments and say, well, actually, how many people got loans? I think that needs to change. You need to be more specific going forward. I would recommend it, that have specific benchmarks, how many home repair loans, how many home purchase loans, how many loans to different geographies in the next contract, regardless of who it is. It could be KeyBank or whoever. The second, commitments from banking partners should be legally binding. The current previous contract, or the one we're currently in, just says they will make their best efforts. Third, consequences for failing to meet benchmarks. There's no provision right now for either terminating the current agreement or providing penalties, or perhaps excluding them from future, excluding a banking partner from future bidding on contracts if they fail to meet. You've really got no leverage. And I think that that should be considered in the next contract. And the fourth is weigh the past performance and meeting credit needs. You now have a report that in some detail shows the past performance of lenders, many of them, that you might consider as a banking partner in your next contract. And finally, a recommendation that whoever the banking partner is, and whatever they say to you that we're going to do X, Y, or Z over the next 4 years, ask them to say, what resources are you devoting to make sure that happens? What marketing resources, what staffing resources? Because it's one thing to say they're going to do it, but if they don't allocate the money for the marketing to reach out to communities, they don't allocate the money for staffing, it may not happen. So I am done. I was hoping to keep this to about 10 minutes, and I hope I did. And I know that I didn't present the full report, but I do believe we could show that in case you have questions about that. Any questions?
You did provide a copy to our staff so that anyone interested in it could email them for copies?
Yes.
You gave it to both Joe Nani and Cynthia Mason?
I believe, well, I may not have given it specifically to Joe. I provided to Sharon, and hopefully
That
through
works.
Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, Joe. I think, is he behind me?
No.
Oh, okay.
So he won't get a knife or anything thrown at you.
All right. All right.
Okay. Gentlemen, questions? Or statements?
Statements. First, I'd just like to commend all of you, everyone who's been a part of this important work. It's critical. It's beneficial to, again, to continue this conversation, to move it forward. And your recommendations, we're going to take them to heart. We'll again have conversation with the administration, and we will look to build in future contracts through conversation with the administration to continue to move this needle forward.
Thank you.
I want to thank this team again from my exploratory desire to make sure that lenders do as much as they can in Cuyahoga County. I am a great believer in the American dream. From those of you who know me, know that it is something I tout, that Americans should be able to have a decent education, a decent job, and most of all, a better than decent home. And everyone that has participated as an activist on this community has a similar perspective. They just may articulate it a different way. This commitment to housing, not just affordable housing, but a quality of housing, being able to buy a house, being able to rehab a house, being able to start a small business are keys to keeping this county one of the best counties in the state of Ohio. So I want to again thank my colleagues and peers on this committee for their commitment. Frank, for your due diligence on every one of the questions we ask you to research and more. And for the lenders who are willing to continue to engage with Cuyahoga County, who believe there is merit in the work that we do as a county and the work that they do in our communities for our constituents who are their customers. We continue to look for ways to partner. Sometimes our words feel harsh to the private sector, but we are defending American life and the quality of it, and we cannot forget that it is the taxpayers who pick us and pay us, and so sometimes we have to stand strong on their behalf. And it is that way with a lot of the nonprofits too. We are trying to make things better, And please forgive us if we are a little more harsh than you want us to be, but it is our job to try and strive for a better quality of life in Cuyahoga County. Thank you all for your support. If there are no further questions or comments from my colleagues, this meeting is adjourned.